Lieutenant Emma Rodriguez stood in the mess hall at Fort Bragg, her tray trembling slightly in her hands. The other soldiers were huddled around a table, laughing at something on their phones. Her old combat photo from Afghanistan, the one where she looked terrified during her first deployment. "Look at this," Sergeant Brooks sneered loud enough for everyone to hear. Little Emma thought she could hang with the real soldiers. Now she's stuck pushing papers in supply. Probably froze up when things got real, another voice added. That's why they pulled her from active combat. Can't handle the pressure. Emma kept walking, her eyes fixed on an empty table in the corner. She'd heard it all before. The whispers, the assumptions, the complete dismissal of who she really was and what she'd sacrificed. But what they didn't know was about to change everything. The alarm sirens split the afternoon air like a knife. Red lights flashed across the base as every soldier's phone buzzed with the emergency alert. Active shooter situation at the elementary school on base. Multiple casualties reported. All available personnel respond immediately. The mess hall erupted into chaos. Soldiers scrambled for the exits, grabbing their gear and weapons. Emma stood frozen for just a moment, her heart pounding in her chest. The base elementary school, where 340 children were attending classes, where her goddaughter, 7-year-old Mia, was in 2nd grade. "Move, move, move." Captain Harrison was shouting, organizing response teams. "We need tactical units, medical personnel, and crowd control. This is not a drill." Emma dropped her tray and ran toward the supply depot. Not for weapons, not for tactical gear, but for something else entirely. Because what nobody at Fort Bragg knew was that Lieutenant Emma Rodriguez hadn't been pulled from active combat for freezing up. She'd been reassigned because of what she'd done during a hostage situation in Kandahar, something the military had classified so deeply that even her commanding officers didn't have full clearance to know the details. She was a trained crisis negotiator, one of the best the military had ever produced, and she was about to prove it. Emma Rodriguez had grown up in a small town in Texas, the daughter of a police officer and a school teacher. She'd watched her father talk down dangerous situations with nothing but words and patience. She'd seen her mother handle classroom conflicts with empathy and understanding. By the time she joined the Army at 19, Emma knew that sometimes the strongest weapon wasn't a gun. It was the human voice. Her military career had been unconventional from the start. While other soldiers focused on marksmanship and physical training, Emma studied psychology, body language, and communication techniques. She volunteered for every negotiation training program the Army offered. Her superiors didn't know what to make of her. She was small, barely 5'3". She was quiet, preferring to listen rather than shout commands. She didn't fit the stereotype of what a combat soldier should be. But during her second deployment to Afghanistan, everything changed. A Taliban cell had taken hostages in a village compound, 12 civilians, including 4 children. The standing order was to breach and neutralize. Standard military procedure. Quick, efficient, and likely to result in civilian casualties. Emma had volunteered to try talking first. For 7 hours, she'd stood outside that compound in 110-degree heat, speaking in broken Pashto and English, building trust, finding common ground, understanding what the hostage takers really wanted. And one by one, she'd taught them into releasing every single hostage. No shots fired, no casualties, just words and patience, and an unwavering belief that even enemies could find humanity in each other. The military had been impressed and terrified, because Emma Rodriguez represented something they didn't have a protocol for. A soldier who could end conflicts without violence, who could see the humanity in the enemy, who believed that de-escalation was a form of courage, not weakness. They'd given her medals, commendations, and then they'd quietly reassigned her to supply management at Fort Bragg, where her unique skills wouldn't complicate their standard operating procedures. For 3 years, she'd accepted the demotion with grace. She'd endured the mockery of soldiers who thought she'd failed. She'd kept her head down and her mouth shut. But today, that silence was about to end. Emma burst through the doors of the base command center, still in her mess hall uniform, without any tactical gear. The room was packed with officers coordinating the response to the school shooting. "Rodriguez, what are you doing here?" Captain Harrison barked, This is a tactical situation. Return to your station." "Sir, I need to be part of the response team," Emma said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Absolutely not. Your supply management. This requires combat-trained personnel." "Sir, I'm a certified crisis negotiator. I spent 2 years in Afghanistan de-escalating hostage situations. I need to be there." The room went silent. Every officer turned to stare at her. "You're what?" Sergeant Brooks had followed her into the command center. "Rodriguez, this isn't the time for your fantasies. Real soldiers are handling this." "She's telling the truth." A voice came from the doorway. Colonel Marcus Webb walked into the room, his weathered face grave. He was the base commander, a 30-year veteran who'd seen more combat than most soldiers could imagine. "Lieutenant Rodriguez has the highest success rate of any military negotiator in the past decade," Colonel Webb said quietly. "Her file is classified, but I have clearance. And right now, she's exactly what we need." Captain Harrison looked between Emma and the colonel, his face reflecting shock and disbelief. "The shooter has barricaded himself in the gymnasium," Colonel Webb continued. "He's former military, dishonorably discharged. He's armed, unstable, and he's holding 47 children and 3 teachers hostage. Our tactical teams can breach, but we'll likely lose hostages in the process." He turned to Emma, his eyes reflecting the weight of command and the burden of impossible choices. "Or we can send in Lieutenant Rodriguez and pray that her words are stronger than our weapons." Emma met his gaze without flinching. "Let me talk to him, sir. Let me try." Around her, the command center buzzed with tension. Soldiers who'd dismissed her, mocked her, assumed she was weak, now watched with a mixture of fear and hope. "You'll have 1 hour," Colonel Webb said. "After that, we breach." "Understood. Understood, sir." As Emma turned to leave, Sergeant Brooks stepped in front of her. For a moment, she thought he was going to try to stop her. Instead, he held out a tactical vest and communication headset. "Come back safe," he said quietly, "and bring those kids home." Emma took the vest with steady hands. "That's exactly what I planned to do." The base elementary school was surrounded by tactical vehicles, armed soldiers, and terrified parents being held back by military police. Emma walked through the perimeter, ignoring the chaos around her. Her focus was complete, total, absolute. She could see the gymnasium through the windows, movement inside, shadows of children huddled together, the shooter pacing back and forth, his weapon visible. "His name is Marcus Chun," a voice came through her earpiece. It was Colonel Webb, monitoring from the command center. Former sergeant, decorated combat veteran, discharged after a mental health evaluation, multiple PTSD incidents. He's been off his medication for 3 weeks. Emma closed her eyes, processing the information. This wasn't an enemy. This was a broken soldier who'd been failed by the system, someone who'd given everything for his country and received nothing but a diagnosis and a dismissal. She understood him, because in some ways, she was him. "I'm going in," Emma said into her radio. "Negative. Too dangerous. Talk from outside the door." "Sir, if I want him to see me as human, I need to be human." Not a voice through a door. "I need to go in." A long pause. "Then, you have 1 hour. Be careful." Emma walked to the gymnasium entrance, her hands visible, no weapon drawn. She knocked on the door, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. "Marcus Chun," she called out. "My name is Emma Rodriguez. I'm not here to hurt you. I just want to talk." Silence, then a voice, rough and desperate. "Stay back. I don't want to hurt these kids, but I will if you try to come in." "I understand," Emma said calmly. "I'm not trying to come in uninvited. But Marcus, I'm a soldier like you. I know what it's like to feel like the military used you up and threw you away. I know what it's like to feel invisible." Another pause. Then the door opened slightly. Emma could see Marcus through the crack. He was in his mid-30s, exhausted, with eyes that held too much pain. "You don't know anything about me," he said. "You're right," Emma admitted, "but I know what it feels like to be dismissed, to have people assume you're weak because you're struggling, to feel like nobody sees the real you anymore." She paused, letting her words sink in. Behind her, she could hear tactical teams positioning themselves, but she ignored them. Right now, there was only Marcus and the connection she was trying to build. "Can I come in, Marcus?" "Just me, no weapons, no tricks, just 2 soldiers talking." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the door opened wider. "Hands where I can see them," Marcus said, his voice shaking. Emma raised her hands and stepped inside the gymnasium. Behind her, the door closed with a sound like a cell door locking. She was now trapped inside with an armed, unstable veteran and 47 terrified children, and she had exactly 58 minutes to save them all. The gymnasium was silent except for the quiet sobbing of children. They were huddled together in one corner, their teacher Mrs. Patterson holding them close. Emma's goddaughter Mia was there, her eyes wide with fear. Emma forced herself to focus only on Marcus, to see him, really see him. He was holding an AR-15, but his grip was loose, uncertain. His face was streaked with tears. This wasn't a monster. This was a broken man who'd reached his breaking point. "Thank you for letting me in," Emma said quietly, keeping her hands visible. "Don't thank me," Marcus said bitterly. "I'm about to ruin a lot of lives, starting with my own." "Why are you here, Marcus?" "Because nobody else would listen." His voice cracked with emotion. "I gave 8 years to this country. 8 years in Iraq and Afghanistan. I watched my friends die. I killed people. I did things I can't forget. And when I came home and said I needed help, you know what they did?" Emma waited, letting him talk. "They gave me some pills and told me to deal with it. They said I was fit for duty and then discharged me when I couldn't. Stop having panic attacks. They took away the only thing I knew how to do, be a soldier. And then they wondered why I fell apart. That wasn't fair," Emma said simply. Marcus looked at her in surprise. What happened to you wasn't fair. You deserved better. You deserved real support, real help, real recognition for what you sacrificed. And instead, the system failed you." Tears were streaming down Marcus's face now. "Why are you saying that? You're supposed to tell me I'm wrong, that I should put down the weapon and accept my punishment." "I'm not here to tell you what you should do," Emma said. "I'm here to listen, to see you, because for too long, nobody has." She slowly lowered her hands, making herself vulnerable, making herself human. "Marcus, I know what it's like to be invisible, to have people assume you're weak when you're actually the strongest person in the room. I spent 3 years being mocked by soldiers who had no idea what I'd done in Afghanistan, who had no idea that I'd saved lives while they were still figuring out which end of the rifle to hold." Marcus lowered his weapon slightly. "You're a negotiator. I'm a soldier who understands that courage doesn't always look like violence. And right now, the most courageous thing you can do is choose to live, to fight for yourself the way you fought for this country." "I'm tired of fighting," Marcus whispered. "I know, but these children aren't. They have their whole lives ahead of them. And Mrs. Patterson over there has students who need her. And somewhere out there, Marcus, there are people who still believe you're worth fighting for." Emma took a small step forward, "Including me." For 45 minutes, Emma talked with Marcus Chun. Not at him, with him. She listened to his stories of combat, of loss, of the friends who didn't come home. She shared her own struggles, her own feelings of invisibility and dismissal. Slowly, the weapon in Marcus's hands lowered. Slowly, the desperation in his eyes softened into something else. Not happiness, not peace, but hope. The fragile, tentative hope of someone who'd forgotten what it felt like to be seen. "What happens if I surrender?" Marcus asked quietly. "You'll face consequences," Emma said honestly. "This is serious, Marcus. You scared a lot of people today, but you also have a chance to get real help, real treatment, a chance to heal instead of ending everything. What if I can't heal? Then you try anyway, because that's what soldiers do. We don't quit, we fight, even when the enemy is our own mind." Marcus looked at the children huddled in the corner. "I never wanted to hurt them. I just wanted someone to pay attention, to see that veterans are suffering and nobody cares. They see you now," Emma said gently. "The whole base sees you. And I promise you, Marcus, we're going to make sure they keep seeing you, that your story helps other veterans get the support they deserve." Marcus Chun slowly lowered the AR-15 to the ground. His hands were shaking, his face wet with tears, but his eyes were clear. "Okay," he whispered, "okay." Emma spoke calmly into her radio. "We're coming out. Suspect is unarmed and surrendering peacefully. Tell tactical teams to stand down. Nobody fires a shot. Understood?" Colonel Webb's voice came through, thick with emotion. "Understood. Well done, Lieutenant." Emma walked to Marcus and gently took his arm. "Come on, let's get you some help. Real help this time." As they walked toward the door, the children began to move. Mrs. Patterson was crying with relief, and little Mia ran to Emma, wrapping her arms around her legs. "You saved us," Mia whispered. Emma knelt down, hugging her goddaughter tight. "No, sweetie, Marcus saved you. He chose to be brave when it mattered most." When Emma and Marcus stepped out of the gymnasium, the entire base was waiting. Soldiers stood at attention. Parents rushed forward to collect their children. And for the first time in 3 years, Emma Rodriguez was seen, not as the quiet woman in supply management, not as the soldier who couldn't handle combat, but as who she really was: a guardian, a negotiator, someone whose greatest weapon was understanding. 3 months later, Lieutenant Emma Rodriguez stood in front of a classroom at Fort Bragg. But this time, she wasn't being mocked, she was teaching. Crisis negotiation isn't about winning, she told her students, a mix of young soldiers and experienced officers. It's about seeing the human being on the other side of the conflict. It's about understanding that sometimes, the strongest action is the gentlest word. Her class had become mandatory for all military personnel at Fort Bragg. Colonel Webb had personally ensured that crisis negotiation training was now a core part of every soldier's education. Marcus Chun was in Aviation hospital, receiving intensive treatment for PTSD. Emma visited him weekly. He was making progress, slowly but surely. His case had sparked a national conversation about veteran mental health, leading to increased funding and support programs. The Army had offered Emma a promotion. Captain Rodriguez, head of the newly formed Crisis Response Unit. She'd accepted, on the condition that she could continue teaching, because for every soldier who learned that strength could look like patience, that courage could sound like compassion, lives would be saved, conflicts would be resolved without violence, and broken people would be given a chance to heal. Sergeant Brooks stopped by her office after class, looking uncomfortable. "I owe you an apology," he said quietly. "For 3 years, I treated you like you didn't belong here, like you were weak. I was wrong." Emma smiled. "You weren't wrong to be skeptical. You were wrong to assume you knew my whole story before you'd heard it. How did you stay so calm when we were mocking you, dismissing you? How did you not just explode?" "Because I knew who I was," Emma said simply. "I didn't need your validation to know my worth. I would have liked it, but I didn't need it." She looked out the window at soldiers training on the parade ground. The quiet ones, the ones you overlook, they're often the strongest, because they've learned that real strength doesn't need to announce itself. As the sun set over Fort Bragg, Emma thought about all the invisible people in the world, the ones who kept things running, who solved problems quietly, who chose compassion over conflict. She thought about Marcus Chun, fighting to rebuild his life one day at a time. She thought about the 47 children who'd gone home to their families because words had been stronger than weapons. And she thought about the lesson she'd learned over and over again, that the most important battles aren't always fought with guns and glory. Sometimes they're fought with patience and understanding and the quiet courage to believe that every person, no matter how broken, deserves to be seen. Never judge someone's strength by their silence. The quietest person in the room might be the one carrying the heaviest burden and possessing the greatest courage. True power isn't always loud. It doesn't always demand attention. Sometimes it sits quietly in the corner, waiting for the moment when the world needs it most. Real heroes don't always wear their achievements like badges. Sometimes they wear them like scars, hidden beneath quiet dignity and gentle words. And when you dismiss someone because they don't fit your idea of strength, you might be overlooking the very person who could save your life. Strength is not just physical. Courage is not just aggressive. And sometimes the most powerful thing a person can do is choose understanding over judgment, compassion over violence, and patience over pride. The people you underestimate today might become the heroes who save you tomorrow. So look closer, listen better, and never assume that silence means weakness, because sometimes silence is just strength waiting for the right moment to speak.